lifestyle design. This is exactly.secretsoflongevity.com, and I have a recipe here today. It's very simple. It's basically just how to make ghee. If you're not familiar with ghee, it's a process of working with butter and removing some of the proteins and fats that are less damaged or more damaged by heat, and you're skimming those off while it boils. So ghee is definitely not raw, but by doing this you're taking away the things that are damaged from the heat. And since I personally only have access to pasteurized butter at this time, this is a way of getting organic grass-fed butter that is pasteurized and turning it into something that I'm interested in consuming, because it would be the same as if I got raw butter and made ghee out of it. So it's an Ayurvedic technique or process that has been used in Ayurvedic medicine for many years. It's a very ojas building food. Ojas is sort of the Ayurvedic term for something that's very similar to the concept of Jing in Chinese medicine. I know many of you are familiar with that. And so this is an oil or a food that is very nutrifying and feeds the most oily and lubricated parts of our body. So that's the joints, certain parts of the internal organs, and also the bone marrow and other things like that. So again, these things are related to Jing in the Chinese term, but ojas is what they're said to nourish in Ayurvedic medicine. One way you want to do this is if you want to make a large quantity of it and you keep it in your cupboard or in the fridge, just like coconut oil, and you can use it either in smoothies, elixirs, on toast or any other food you're making. You can use it for cooking specifically. It's safer to cook with than butter or olive oil or any other vegetables that are going to get damaged by the heat. We do know that any form of cooking to any oil, you're going to have some damage to some degree, but ghee and coconut oil are going to be your best options for the absolute least amount of damage that will occur. So basically you just need a stick of butter. I've got one brick, which I guess is 250 grams, I'm not sure, I think that's half a pound of butter, and a little bit left over from another brick, and we're going to put it in a little pot here. This is just a ceramic pot. That's probably the ideal thing to use. I don't recommend using steel, or definitely not Teflon. Probably the absolute best option is glass. You can get sort of like those Pyrex glass pots in many places, and that will absolutely have no way of leaching, but of course they're more fragile. You have to be careful with them, especially when you're cleaning them in the sink. So yeah, you're just going to turn the heat on, probably on a low heat, and put your butter right into the saucepan. So that that'll melt down and fit in the pot better, but it'll be a nice size for the amount of butter we're using. I could have used a larger pot, but you want to have it a good size because you're also going to be skimming it off. And this is one thing you're going to need, is some sort of way of skimming it off to remove the fat and protein solids that come to the surface, the butter solids they're called. And you'll see that in a moment. So as we see here, the butter is melting quite quickly. I literally just had the camera off for not even a minute, and it's already gone down to covering the butter completely. It'll probably be another minute or two before this is totally dissolved. And then you want it on a light simmer to slowly bring those solids to the surface. As you can see here at the sides, you have this sort of foam starting, and that's going to be the stuff you're skimming off. And you're going to do it until it's basically a light yellowish clear color. Or in some cases it'll be kind of more orange colored. If you have really sort of butter from a cow that's been fed a lot of grain, it's going to be almost like white. One way to know if butter is high quality is the more yellowish orange it is, the more likely it is that it was a grass-fed cow. And that's just because that's the proper color of the fats that the cows produce when they're eating the diet that they're meant to be eating. So the butter's almost completely melted. It hasn't started simmering on a low heat yet. I've turned it right down because of the size of the pot. And then I have a bowl that I'm going to be scooping the foam and butter solids into. And one thing to keep in mind is once that's in there, you don't want to just throw this down the drain, because it will harden in your drain and cause, if you were to do that continually, over time you're going to build up grime in your sink and it's eventually going to clog up. So you'd want to let that sit in there, harden, then put it right in the garbage or the compost. So basically with the strainer you're just going to go through, get that foam. The other thing you can use is a spoon, but I find it easier to use a strainer at first and then use a spoon for the bits that are left over at the end. This gets the majority of the stuff without losing too much of the actual butter oil we're wanting to keep. So butter, if it's grass-fed, is high in things like vitamin A, and despite what many vegans will tell you, you can't get that much vitamin A on a plant-based diet. So plant foods only have precursors to vitamin A in a variety of forms, and we need enzymes to convert it to vitamin A. And while, yes, a certain percentage of people can do this fine, quite a large, actually the majority of people can't do it all that well. I'm not sure if it's related to genetics or not. I'm not even sure if there's a way you can find this out. But basically, if you're vegan and you have vitamin A deficiencies through a blood test, you're probably one of those people that can't convert it all that well. So animal products are a way to get vitamin A. Of course, you also got vitamin E. If it's grass-fed butter from the start of the summer, it's known as June butter. That's probably the absolute best type of butter you can get. And you wouldn't want to make ghee of that if you can get it raw, because it's going to have something called factor X. Some people interpret that as vitamin K2, and it's what Weston Price talked about in his famous work, which is Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. And the properties he talked about it having and providing the body is commonly thought to be the same that it's found in vitamin K2. Now, if that's exactly the same thing or not, I'm not 100% certain, but that's just one factor that's in butter. And that is damaged by heat, so you're not necessarily going to have that or much of it in ghee. So if you can get raw butter around the time of June, that's grass-fed, organic, and from a non-hybridized cow like the Holsteins and any other cow that's making a type A1 casein, you're going to be getting a very high-quality butter if it's like Jersey cow or Guernsey. So we're just going to keep skimming this off, and as you can see, there's a lot of sort of this foam, which is the protein and milk solids, and some of the fats like the omega-6s and omega-3s that are damaged by the heat anyways and are already damaged by the pasteurization. So they're being taken out, which would cause harm to the body, and you're left with just the saturated fat which is the clear yellow fat that you see simmering in there. And for this last bit, we're going to use a spoon because you can get right up to the edge and get all those bits without them slipping through. You're going to lose a little bit of the oil, but that's alright because, you know, you still have the majority of it in there. You just want to make sure you get as much of it you can so you have very pure and clean looking ghee. Whoops, I just dropped it right back in. So let's see if I can get some of that oil back out. So it takes a bit of time, so maybe if you're wanting to make a large batch all at once, you can do a couple sticks, maybe a pound or two. And most of it's gone there. I mean, the bubbles are just obviously it's bubbling, but you can see the little bits that are white that stay floating and aren't really bubbly are the bits you're wanting to skim off. And you've got most of it. And one way, once you've got it to this point, you could probably turn it off, and those bubbles will go away, and you can see the last little bits that you want to take out. One thing that was often done in India is that they make medicinal ghee, so they'll make the ghee, and at this stage you can add things to it that you'd want the ghee to have imbued into it. So herbs, like whole herbs that you have leaves of. So you can make garlic ghee, rosemary ghee, any sort of culinary kitchen herb if you have it sort of pretty fresh. It doesn't have to be fresh in terms of not being dried. You could use a dried herb, but not sort of like those ones that you have sitting around your kitchen that might be in a clear bottle that sits out on the counter in full light for the past 2 years. There's not going to be much properties left in that. And as you see, as the bubbles start going away, you've got this foam that you're just wanting to skim the rest of it off with, which is very handy once you've turned the heat off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix some extracts into this, because there's obviously certain herbs you wouldn't want to put in there that you can't eat whole. So like hushu or any root that you don't want to eat the root, you just want the properties of it that you normally make a tea out of. I'm going to put the already made extract into here, as well as with some pine pollen, to make this sort of a yin and yang Jing ghee. or ojas building ghee, but both the yin and yang aspects. So that's to my liking, and we're going to throw in some hushu at this point and stir it in, and as well as some pine pollen. You could let it cool, but you want to keep in mind that at a certain point it's going to start getting hard. So actually I might let it cool down to the temperature of my finger, just because I know the pine pollen I want to keep stable in its form. I could add the hushu now because it's already being extracted using heat, so you're not going to damage it any further at this temperature. If you had this obviously in the oven at 400, it would probably damage this more than it's already been altered, if it's been altered at all through the processing. However, the ghee, it's just been at a boil and now it's turned off and it's slowly cooling off. So that's actually at a fairly much lower temperature now that can handle the herbal extract. So I thought of something pretty fun as well that I'm going to add in here. There's some cardamom essential oil. So since this is oil based, adding oils are obviously going to be mixed in very completely and throughout the whole product that we're going to be making through the end substance. So I'm going to probably put 2 or 3 drops in. I have to be very careful not to overdo it, so I'm going to watch very carefully. This is a very high quality oil from Germany, and you can usually find these in Canada at a fair number of health food stores across Canada. It's the Aromatherapist brand. I believe it's in the US as well, but it would look a little bit different from this. It's not the orange label with the blue bottle. I'm not familiar with the brand in the US, but I know it's there somewhere. And otherwise, I also recommend using the essential oils from Living Libations, and you can order those, although they're from Canada. At least the Living Libations, the company, is situated in Northern Ontario, but they do ship to the US, and I know this company doesn't ship to Canada. So we're going to add the hushu, and this is Hyperion Herbs hushu. I'm going to add a full tablespoon, because this is a large amount of ghee. I'm only going to be using maybe like a teaspoon to a tablespoon, absolute tops, at a time. Usually when I do use it, I'll just use a knife, because it'll be hard in the fridge, and I'll dig out maybe a teaspoon's worth and put it into a drink. Because it's so concentrated as well, you don't need a full tablespoon. That's quite a bit, like you would put a tablespoon of coconut oil in. But this way, it sort of makes it quicker and easier in the future that I don't need to use tons of hushu every time I want to make a drink. So if I want to make a drink, I just put the ghee in instead of opening up a dozen bags to put all my herbs extracts into a drink if I'm using extracts that day. And so it just saves time in that regard, so that's a good thing you can do. I'd actually add 2 tablespoons, because come to think of it, say this lasted me 2 weeks if I was using a little bit every day. 2 tablespoons is a decent amount to use, and that way it's probably getting about a half teaspoon to a teaspoon every time I use a little bit, and that's a sort of standard dose for these extracts. So they're great. Hushu is high in lecithin and zinc and a variety of other minerals, things like iron. Great for building blood, and it's been my absolute favorite herb for a long time now. I use it almost daily, so I encourage you to check out the links below and you can grab yourself some. Try it out. It comes in these 2-ounce packets, and you can use a teaspoon at a time, tablespoon at a time, however much you want to use. The other thing I'm going to throw in here is some pine pollen, and I'll add 2 tablespoons of that as well. This is from Sir Thrival. It's cracked cell already, so it's very absorbable. That's high in protein, high in sort of testosterone, androstenedione, DHEA, and a variety of other androgenic compounds that in the powder form aren't as absorbable as they would be in the tincture form. However, it's very nutritive, and it's a yang Jing tonic in the Chinese sense. So we've got that, both the balance of the yin and yang for this medicinal ghee that I created. So I'm going to use that fork that I had right at the beginning, but I was using it on the butter just to stir in this extract. So it's no longer going to be that nice clear color, but it's going to have all those herbal properties. It's probably going to end up being a muddy brown color because of the hushu. But I just want to break up those lumps before it hardens, obviously, so that it's nice smooth texture. I'm actually going to also add 1 more drop of cardamom because I think it should need maybe 1 or 2 more drops. So you want to be aware of what types of essential oils you're using, that they are medicinal grade if you're going to use them internally, and that they're of the proper type to be able to be used internally. But generally any essential oil that's a spice that you would find in your kitchen you could use internally. So like cardamom, rosemary, oregano, You want to use very small amounts of them, of course, because they can be pretty strong. Cinnamon, again, you'd want to use small amounts of that because that's quite aggressive. I've known people that have burned their tongue from putting it on their tongue almost as like a breath freshener, and literally gotten like a little hole in their tongue, almost like a scar that was a little divot that took some time to heal. Obviously the peppermints, but then of course there's also a variety of oils that are toxic when taken internally. You want to stay away from those. So you're going to need to whisk it a bit to get those little lumps. I didn't realize it was going to get this chunky. There's some little ones that I have to pull to the side to break up. But once you're done that, you're going to pour it into a jar and put it in the fridge to cool, or simply in your cupboard if you don't feel the need to put it in the fridge. And you'll have your ghee ready to go for when you want to use it. We're going to just simply pour it right in once it's cooled down. You want it to cool down a bunch because you don't obviously want to crack the glass. I've done that before, pouring like some hot tea or something into a jar almost immediately after I turn off the heat and it stopped boiling, and the jar will crack and the tea goes everywhere. And right here I just realized there's some herbs at the bottom. So just with a spoon, you just scrape the rest out. Let me see into here. That's the thickest part. Also forgot to mention that butter can contain vitamin D, especially if it's grass-fed, especially if it's from the middle of summer. You're going to have the high vitamin D content that will translate into higher vitamin D levels in yourself in the winter, which is a very important thing to get in the winter time. So I've got it in here, just put the lid on, and then put that in the fridge. It's going to go hard. I'll show you once it's hardened, but it's going to take maybe half an hour tops to get hard, and I'll show you it at that point. So here's the hardened ghee. One thing I realized I should have done is stirred it as it was hardening. As you can see, some of the herbs obviously sank to the bottom because it's darker and then lighter at the top. I just tried some. You can see I kind of dug a little hole in there with a knife to pull it out. It's great in a drink. One way I could have also done that is if you put it in the freezer right away, it should start to harden before it settles out that much. So I'd put it in the fridge and I just left it. But if you were to go in and stir it like every 5 minutes or so, you'd probably have a lot more of the whatever you've put in it stay suspended while it hardens. I mean, I'll still be able to get that out, but it'll be more towards the end that I'll be getting a lot more of the herbs, unfortunately. So try this out if you're interested in making your own ghee. It's an easy way of doing it, and if you look at the prices of ghee in stores, it's usually more expensive than the amount of labor that it takes. It's really quite easy, as you saw. And you can save money if you just simply take regular butter and you want to make it yourself. So with that, I'm going to say check out the links below, and take care and embrace life without limits.